You're in a good place now. You are listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to the Ashley Burgess Show, formerly known as Live Your True Life Perspectives. I know that many of us have had maybe one or two symptoms of narcissism, whether it's we're looking for added attention in our life, or sometimes maybe being self-centered on certain subject matters. But having one or two symptoms of narcissism is very different than someone who is dealing with malignant narcissism, which is the extreme version of narcissism, or someone with sociopathic or antisocial personality disorder. And in today's podcast, I really want to talk about these two disorders, and I want to talk about them specifically because I think that many people are in relationships with people that have these signs and symptoms. They entered into these relationships not really knowing what they were dealing with. Maybe they were overlooking a red flag or two or three for whatever reason that is, and now they're in a situation where they're almost like in a prison situation because they've been separated from friends and family. Other people don't know or understand the situation, and they also might not clearly understand the situation that they're currently dealing with, because sometimes we can be in a situation and not fully know exactly what we're dealing with and if there is an actual definition or even a title for the situation. So this is going to be exposing some stuff here on the podcast. And this podcast is dedicated to anyone who saw a few red flags but thought, hey, things can get better, things are going to change, they'll go away. It's for that person, because I know that we all want the best for situations. We all want people to be able to get better or augment or change, and we all hope for that. But sometimes that's just not going to happen. And so we're going to be talking about that in today's podcast. So let's begin exploring the symptoms and signs of sociopathic behavior, as well as a malignant narcissistic behavior, because these are very important to understand. They're not the same thing. They are a bit different, but they are very similar. I think that I've given that example many times when I've talked about like borderline personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, and histrionic personality disorder. I talk about them all being in like the van, right? It's like the three kids in the back seat in the van and how they're sitting really closely together and they kind of overlap sometimes. Like, when you're going over a pothole or whatever, you might hit someone else's leg or you might kind of roll onto somebody. And so there are some similarities similar in both of these situations, and we're going to talk about that today as well. One of the examples that I want to offer is that when you're living in a situation like this with somebody with these signs and symptoms, it's like living much like you're living with an alcoholic or a drug addict. And why I mean that is that a lot of times when somebody is in a relationship with somebody that's an alcoholic or a drug addict, the other person is very codependent. The other person feels like they can get that person to slow down or stop. They think, if I just act a certain way, if I just do this, if I don't talk about that, if I just listen to what they want to talk about, or if I don't bring up anything about myself, everything's going to be fine. Okay, I just want to keep the peace. I want to keep the peace. I just don't want to have any arguments or fights. I got to get through tonight. I can go back to work tomorrow, and then I'll suck it all up and go home and deal with it again at 7 o'clock tomorrow night. And I'll go through the whole process, keeping the peace, getting up, leaving the house, and going through that. So anybody that's living with someone that's a malignant narcissist or has sociopathic tendencies, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And the fact that you're constantly trying to keep the peace, and in the process, you are completely losing your identity. You're losing yourself in the process. You're not even able to talk about how you feel or what you think or any of that. None of that matters, because if you bring it up, you're going to be attacked verbally, maybe physically. You're going to be attacked. They're going to get angry with you. They're going to fight with you. And so those are things that we're going to talk about in today's podcast. One of the things I want to bring up first, though, is that a lot of times we don't really think about these things because in the beginning of this relationship, that person seemed really great on paper, right? They seemed really great on paper. Maybe they were really outgoing, right? Had a great personality. Or maybe they seemed to be successful, or they told you how successful or how smart they were. And then there's a lot of love bombing. There's a lot of giving you attention. And this is a perfect puzzle piece for anybody with codependent tendencies. It's also a perfect puzzle piece for anybody that's empathic and doesn't understand how to safeguard being an empath, because, these people are going to have issues. You're going to try to save them, help them, that sort of thing in the process, but they're just going to, they're just going to beat you up for it. And they all start the relationships will start with love bombing, right? You're getting all this attention, you're getting all this attention that you want. And everybody likes attention. Even if you have codependent tendencies, we all like attention, right? Maybe it's the sex, maybe it's falling into the relationship very quickly. In that process, it's like a whirlwind, right? You're overlooking those red flags. A lot of times too, people have that fear of being alone, right? We have that fear of being alone. We have that fear of not having somebody. So we would rather, instead of like choosing, maybe waiting and choosing somebody that might seem to be better, or maybe somebody that we feel more comfortable with, we're like, oh gosh, I haven't been in a relationship in this long, and I might as well go on with this. I don't want to be alone. And so some of you may be dealing with this directly right now in your current life. Some of you may have run away from this type of relationship, and you're just, you're just finally breathing at this point. And some of you are watching your friends go through this on a day-to-day basis. And it is like watching a sad, horrible train wreck. So whether you're in one or two or three of these categories, you understand the significance of getting this information out. Now, no way, shape, or form in this podcast am I discussing benign or narcissistic light. This is not at all what we're talking about. People can have signs and symptoms of narcissism. It doesn't make them a malignant narcissist. It doesn't make them, a sociopath. That is not what we're talking about. Everybody can have a sign or symptom. Doesn't make them a full-on narcissist. So let's deep dive into the signs of a malignant narcissist and these common behaviors that a malignant narcissist is going to display. The first big one, and this doesn't just apply only to malignant narcissists, but it's a big one for it, and that is paranoia. And paranoia is really a big underlying theme. They mistrust other people. They believe that other people are conspiring, plotting against them on a constant basis. If you're in a relationship with them, they're probably thinking that you are doing stuff behind their back. Maybe you're recording them on video, or you're talking behind their back. They're going to be constantly questioning you because they're completely paranoid. And sometimes that's because they're doing those exact things back to you without you knowing. So sometimes it's because, hey, that's what they're doing. And so what's good for the goose, good for the gander kind of thing. But the other side of the coin is they are very paranoid of everybody and everything. And that's sad because that gets in the way of a normal relationship. They're constantly questioning everybody's motives, everybody's agenda. And you can feel like you're in lockdown if you're living with somebody like this because they don't want anybody around. They don't want to go out. They don't want to do anything. And then if they do something like go out or hang out with friends of yours or what have you, they're going to have lots of things to say about them. They're going to, basically disparage them and talk about how horrible they are because they're going to want to try to keep you for their own so they can keep their two eyes on you at all times. Another aspect of malignant narcissism, what I think is interesting, is kind of that sadism kind of situation where they like to see people in pain. They like to see people discomfort. They like to see people feeling bad. They don't want you to feel comfortable. That's not something that they want. They want you to always be on edge. They like it. They like to see you squirm. Okay. That's something they like. They really do. They like to see you upset. They'll say things and do things on purpose to anger you. They might even talk about your mother, your father, your grandmother, your best friend, your brother, your sister, and they will say some of the most deplorable things about them over and over again, wanting you to react, loving it when you get angry. That fuels them. And so remember, if you're in a situation like this, you don't want to give this person fuel because you're just playing into their hand. And it's hard because it's triggering, right? They'll pick the absolute worst comments they can make about some of the closest people to you, or even you, right? Making fun of you, putting you down, those types of things, and knowing what really gets to you, right? And then they'll harp on it all day, all night, hours and hours, to watch you squirm, to watch you get upset, to watch you lose it is what they're looking for. And this all leads into the concept that they are master manipulators. They can manipulate anybody, right? They manipulate you through lies. They are constant liars, by the way. These people will lie about absolutely everything. They will blackmail you. They will guilt you. All this to get their goals and their needs met. They might blackmail you for a long period of time. Like, I remember when you did this, or I remember when you were doing these drugs, and it would be horrible for your employer to find out that you do drugs. or it would be horrible for this person to find out XYZ about you. I mean, all I would have to do is send a simple email to somebody. And so they're constantly using this blackmail to keep you there, to keep you in check, right? So that they always have you. They always have something over your head. And so you're constantly in this relationship, really upset about being in it, realizing that this is a really painful relationship, praying it gets better, but every day it seems to get a little bit worse. But on top of that, this person is basically blackmailing you and saying they're going to do all these things. And so you're in fear of leaving the relationship. It's interesting too, because they are very controlling. They control. They're complete control people. They want to control you. They are completely out of control. Okay. And I've always known that, even at a young age when I was growing up, that anybody that tries to control you all the time is completely out of control. Like they don't know how to control themselves. They don't know how to deal with their own issues. And so they want to control your feelings, your behaviors, your actions, everything, because they can't control themselves. And so if they control you, they're kind of the master of you, right? And so they like that because they love to control people. They like to make things painful. They like to make people jump through hoops. They like to make things difficult. So also there's a difficult formation of social bonds with them. So they don't build healthy, lasting relationships with other people. They just don't. I mean, as you can see, if you're in the situation, or if you've recently exited stage right, or you're watching somebody from a distance in this situation, and that's kind of the hardest, because if you have a friend that's in a relationship with somebody that is a malignant narcissist, and possible with antisocial personality disorder, you're probably not talking to your friend much, because that other person has positioned it where you're the bad person, you're the evil person. They must separate from you. Because remember, it's about brainwashing somebody and completely controlling every aspect of their life. Okay. They also have a lack of remorse. They don't care about what they do. They're not like, oh, I better not do that because that's bad. No, it's like they don't care about harming you. They don't care about hurting you. They don't care. You're just a means to an ends anyway. You're a stepping stone. And I hate to say that, but with a malignant narcissist, you're like the rock on the ground where they step on your head to get over you, right? And so they'll step on your head every single day in order to jump over you. If you were drowning, they would step on your head, push you under the water. Okay, that's just how it is. And I hate to say this because I know that a lot of you say, well, maybe they can get help. Well, maybe they can get help, but the big hallmark of these folks is they don't want help. They don't feel like they need help. They feel like you're the problem. You are the problem. You're the one you're the weak one. Okay. And I hate to say it this way because I know that people don't want to hear this. And I know that you're not, if you're in the situation, you're like, God, that's horrible. But I have to speak the truth, because I think once you hear the truth and you realize what they really are about, you realize it's not about rehabilitating. You realize it's about you saving your own ass. Okay. Like there's a time when you can sit there and help everybody and get everybody, like let's say the ship is sinking and you're helping everybody get on the lifeboat. That's great. But if you're helping somebody get on the lifeboat that's going to basically shoot holes in the lifeboat and kill everybody anyway, you need to think twice about who you're putting on that lifeboat. And sometimes in these relationships, the only way out is by yourself. You can't take them with you, right? And so remember that. I hate to say that, but if somebody's not willing to get help and they're not getting help and they're going around it and they're causing chaos and violence and anger in your life, you need to really step back and decide what you want to do. So a malignant narcissist isn't exactly the same as a sociopath. We know that. But the terms are kind of used interchangeably to describe folks that have a combination of narcissistic traits as well as antisocial personality disorder traits. Okay. So one of the biggest, situations, so they have lots of things that they really, I guess, they connect with. So the dots that connect is they have a lack of empathy, right? Across the board, both groups. They have a tendency of being cruel and mean and sadistic, both groups, and they're cool with that. That gives them fuel. And malignant narcissism is kind of, it's obviously the more complex version and the most dangerous version of narcissism, right? Where, people display antisocial and sadistic tendencies. So you see how this really overlaps. Okay, so let's talk about sociopathic or antisocial personality traits, because I think this needs to be discussed, because as long as we get this out in the open, We have a discussion about it. There's no confusion anymore, right? We're not trying to label this on everybody, okay? That's not what we're doing here. Not everybody is this, they're not. But if you're in the situation, you need to know what you're dealing with, okay? You need to have all the arsenal you can of knowledge to be able to power through this and get yourself to safe ground. Okay, so let's antisocial personality traits. Lack of empathy. Okay, there you go. That's a big one. We've talked about that. What about impulsive behavior? They can be very impulsive. They can do things very impulsively. Not everything about consequences. There are never any consequences when it comes to these folks. They will do whatever they want. They don't even think about it, okay? Bam, they're going to do it. They want to control others, right? They always are always wanting to control you. And I can use the word always in this situation because that is fact. They want to control you, and they will threaten you, and they will get aggressive with you, all to control you. What you do, what you say, how you look, where you go, who you talk to, everything. I mean, it's like they want to be literally like, not even a parole officer. I mean, they want to be the warden of the prison, where they tell you when and what you can do, when you can go to the bathroom, all that stuff, because that's the kind of control that they want to have over you, right? Interesting enough, too, they are intelligent, right? They do have charm, and they do have charisma. And so that's why in the beginning, when you met this person, or when your friend met this person, or in the relationship that you just left, when you go back and you remember the beginning of the relationship, there was charm, there was charisma, there was like, oh, wow, this person's, they're very interesting, they're charming, right? And it was really quick to kind of, as you felt like form a bond, even though the bond wasn't really a real bond. It was more of a trauma bond, if anything, right? But they're really good at creating that narrative where you kind of fall into it and they give you that attention. And it's the same. I mean, sociopathic people are very good at this because they're playing a role like from a TV show or a movie. They're playing this role. So also another thing is they don't learn from any mistakes. They don't learn from any punishment. Punishment doesn't mean anything. You punish them all you want. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because remember, they're still getting attention. And the funny thing about these folks, or it's really not funny, I don't know how you want to look at it, but they don't care what kind of attention they get. They don't care at all. And they don't care about making mistakes or getting punished or getting in trouble. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter at all. They will lie too. So, recently we did some videos on sociopathic, and sociopathic type liars, people that will lie, for anything. And it's very interesting because when people do lie, about, if they're a pathological liar, and I think that's one of the recent, videos that we put out on YouTube, being a pathological liar is interesting and people can lie, right? And I know that I think it's funny that we still call it a white lie. I'm not really sure about that, but people can lie about things to safeguard people's feelings and that sort of thing. People can also be habitual liars, right? They can be habitual liars and lie about stuff, or people can be pathological liars. And I see that the antisocial personality or the sociopathic, they can be pathological liars. They will lie about absolutely anything. And that's what's so hard with these people too, is you don't know where you're coming or when you're going. You don't know your head from your ass sometimes, because when you jump in head first into these relationships and you don't realize what you're doing or what's going on in this relationship, the person's telling you so many things that you believe, or you don't know not to believe. It's not like you're like, oh, I'm being lied to. You don't know the difference. You don't know what's going on. And so you just go along with it. And so they're lying to get personal gain. They're lying to get their needs met. And that's a big deal with these people, is they lie constantly to make sure that their needs are met, no matter how they have to lie. They also, antisocial personality disorder folks they can get physically violent. They can have fights. They can fight you. Okay. And you see this a lot, where people will start these types of fights because, again, remember, there is no responsibility and there's no fear of punishment. So, I mean, what do you have there? So they're willing to go to all ends to, make their point known. I also find too that they are very kind of shallow in relationships. There's not a lot of depth there. I mean, basically, all you have is this really highly skilled, manipulative, lying, coercion type individual that's impulsive. And there's not like this deep spiritual being there that doesn't exist. So you're in a relationship with this person that's very superficial. And they can be very attractive too. Malignant narcissists and people with antisocial some people can be unattractive as well. It's not just attractive. People can be unattractive, but you can find some very attractive people as well. And that a lot of times people fall into that trap. Oh, that person looks nice. Well, looks looks can be deceiving. And looks can also play into the hand here as well, because you're looking at something else when you need to probably be thinking about something deeper anyway, and you're falling into this trap. Also an interesting concept too is that, they will even commit crimes. They're okay with that because remember, there's no punishment issues. We don't care about it. And, there's no responsibility. And they're also known to sometimes threaten suicide. And they do this to manipulate you. Okay, because if you have codependent tendencies that are unresolved issues from a parent dynamic or from being raised in your household dynamic, you're going to be very susceptible to being gaslit and manipulated. And if somebody's trying to threaten suicide, you're going to feel sorry for them. They're going to get your sympathy, your attention. Very important things here to recognize. Alcohol and drug abuse, big deal. Yes. Check. Another red flag flying. I feel like we're in China. I feel like we're in communist China here with all the red flags flying. Okay. So alcohol and drug abuse, it goes hand in hand. It fuels them to do more damage. It fuels them to be more aggressive. It fuels them to do these things. So, the last thing you want is somebody with, being a malignant narcissist or having antisocial personality who's also drinking alcohol or doing drugs or cocaine or meth or whatever. That's a really bad combination because you've really set yourself up for failure. Okay. Because that's only going to double down on all of these symptoms. And lastly, the last real, trait that I want to discuss here in the podcast today, because we only have a little bit of time, is they have trouble dealing with any responsibilities in their life. Okay. So one of the side non-benefits, other red flags that you're going to deal with when you're in a relationship with somebody like this, they don't hold down a job. They can't pay bills. They probably can't keep their phone on. They probably are breaking stuff all the time. They can't keep relationships. The list goes on, but you are financially supporting them. And the interesting part is they're going to put you down all the time because you're not financially supporting them at the level that they want, even though they're not supporting you. It's a very interesting dynamic, and they'll make you feel bad, and they'll put you down and call you all kinds of names. But yeah, they're not bringing anything to the table. So not only are they sucking the actual spiritual life out of you, they are also not bringing much to the table. And many of these people came into the relationship with this, this amazing job, supposedly, or an amazing background, supposedly, or this amazing potential. And that's something that is so scary, is that you don't have anything with potential. Okay. And a lot of y'all fell for it. You fell for it. And unfortunately, you took the wrong pill. You fell for it. And now you're dealing with all these issues. And so you might be dealing with kind of a combination of somebody that has a combination of these issues, or straight malignant or straight antisocial. But either way, the reason why I wanted to couple them together in today's podcast is because they're so similar. And these are really important to really identify, because if you're out of the relationship now and you're back in the dating pool, you want to make sure you have that eye on that prize. You want to make sure that you're aware of all these red flags. If you're currently in a situation like this right now and you don't know how to get out, and many of you don't because you're being blackmailed by these people, and we probably need to do a full podcast on that as well. I've recently had many clients come to me, sharing me text messages and videos and everything that's been sent by exes, or they're trying to get out where they're being blackmailed, or they're in a current relationship where the person is constantly blackmailing them. Whether they're blackmailing that they're going to go to the police for something, or they're going to go and tell people that they're being abused, or they're going to go and, and tell their ex-husband or ex-wife that they were, that there was a relationship during the marriage, or they're going to go and tell their kids this, or they're going to go and tell an employer this, or they're going to call a new employer and tell, them about the drug use or the alcoholism or what have you. And so that blackmail is a big piece that keeps a lot of people in, because there's fear, because as we know, these people are pretty much unhinged. right? So it's like, at what level will they go to get what they want? And again, remember, they see us as a stepping stone to getting something more. So it's almost like a gold digger, right? When you have a gold digger, whether it's a woman or whether it's a man, doesn't mean it's always a woman, right? So maybe it's a male gold digger, woman. They don't care. They're going to marry this person and then divorce them to get as much money and property and everything they can possibly get. They've already done their research. They know what they're dealing with. They divorce them. They go find another one. They divorce them. They go find another one. It has nothing to do with the person. It has to do with taking their resources. Okay? That is exactly what that is. And that's very interesting because they care. They have no empathy, no care. They don't value human life. They don't value the relationship. They absolutely don't care. And I would think that gold diggers actually kind of fall into an antisocial personality disorder kind of regiment, as well as maybe a malignant narcissist, because they really don't care, okay, at all. And they'll do anything to get their needs met no matter what. And so if you're in that situation, really step back and think about it. How bad is bad? Like, how bad can they exploit you? How bad can they hurt you? Have you covered your butt? Have you taken care of things that need to be taken care of? Have you lawyered up? Have you gotten yourself in the position that you need to get in to safely walk away from the situation? And there might be some pain and suffering, but I will tell you that if you're in this relationship now, there is definitely pain and suffering. You're definitely dealing with pain and suffering, not only on a daily basis, but on a minute-to-minute basis with this person. Because many of you that I know for a fact by working with clients is that you might leave the house, but this person with malignant narcissism or antisocial or a combination will call you and harass you all day. And then when you get home, you get to deal with the whole brunt of it for hours and hours, okay, until they finally go to sleep and you leave the next day, and they still calling all day, okay, because they don't want you out of their sight. They want to control you. And so right now you are in like a prison type system and you got to get out. So if this is resonating with you, or you want to share this with a friend or family member that is going through this, because you might be on the phone with a friend or family member constantly trying to talk them off jumping, because all this is happening. You keep hearing about it. It's bad. It's negative. You can see that they are just kind of losing their identity. You can see that they're getting sadder and sadder, and maybe even more and more depressed, maybe even in more and more fear of the possible blackmail and outcome. And so if you're seeing that happening with somebody that you know, it's probably time to either share this podcast with them, have a conversation, share the podcast as well, get them the information, because they need help. They need guidance into understanding this, because this isn't easy. Not a lot of people have experience with dealing with these relationships. They'll be like, oh, just leave, just go ahead. But they've already done all this to that person's psyche. They've mentally, messed with that person's psyche. They've lied, they've gaslit, they've done all these things, they've blackmailed. And so it takes precision to get out, but it also takes precision to get somebody's life back on track after this type of damaging, really spiritually damaging relationship. By the way, if you haven't been on YouTube lately, please check in, subscribe to the channel, because you'll get to know that we have new videos, and we're putting up at least average of 2 videos a week. We'll try to get to more of that, but check it out. If you haven't already subscribe, and please share this podcast with others, friends and family, anybody that needs it. And we'll be back next week with another podcast on the Ashley Burgess Show. And don't forget to live your true life.